All right. And I would encourage also if others have questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat as well. Next, we have Alex Bettinardi with TPAL giving a presentation on safety analysis in the MMM framework. Apparently, apparently Alex likes his little chocolate candies. Alex has worked in the Oregon Department of Transportation's Transportation and Planning Analysis Unit for 19 years. He's a registered professional engineer in the state of Oregon and received his bachelor's degree and master's degree in transportation from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Alex represents Oregon on the National Activity Sim Partnership and is leading Oregon's shift to the next generation of travel forecasting models. Alex, excited to have you take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Garth. And the slides are coming across, I assume? Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Yeah, so I wanted to bring a little update about, like in the intro, our efforts moving to the next generation of travel demand models, activity-based models, and specifically the metrics conversations we've been having and how we're, and then dialing into the safety metrics specifically. So I'm going to talk about how we're going to improve safety in travel demand models, or how we're hoping to. Just to be clear, I don't think it takes, it would replace the need for the macro level crash prediction models that Lake was referencing. So I still think those have a lot of importance and value. Anyway, so this isn't an attempt to replace that, just working to get all of our models better and doing a better job around safety. So with that, sorry, I'll just get my slides. There we go. So just an overview. I kind of said it quickly there, but I want to talk about where we're headed with our travel demand, the state's travel demand models, a little bit about the metrics conversation that we've been having alongside those models, specifically diving into the safety conversation, and then kind of just next steps and where we're headed with that. So on the AVM side, around 2021, 2022, I'd say, so the state has had, so this is OMUG and we're underneath the OMSC. So most people probably know about the OMSC and the great history in Oregon about collaborating around model development. So the state has had this great history. Back in the 90s, there was an effort to put our trip-based models that most of the state is using. We had a joint estimation there where we pooled a bunch of survey data, and most of the trip-based models that we're using across the state are still benefiting from that original collaboration. Since the 90s, we've had two major surveys. One is currently just wrapping up to do a statewide level travel survey data collection, which from my understanding is unique across the country and the world, having this a common a survey across the state like this. I mean, there's the National Household Survey, but at a state level, it's unique in Oregon. So for the second time, well, third, depending on how you want to count it, that effort underneath the OMSC is wrapping up. And before 2022, we were a variety of model developing agencies in Oregon. I think we're kind of on their own tracks for the next set of tools, trip-based or activity-based models. And in 2022, underneath the OMSC, we came together and using the survey that's coming up, all agreed to work towards a common joint estimation with this the statewide survey. So in 2022, moving forward to collaborate on a common model estimation. In 2024, we'll be getting the survey data that is key. The only way we're able to develop these models is understanding at the core for how people are traveling, the why, what, when, where, how, of why they're making travel decisions. So that survey data will be delivered in 2024. Alongside that survey data, we've been finalizing the design for our next generation of travel demand models. So that'll be wrapped up in this next month. And the new tool has a GitHub environment. It's called S'more. So we've got s'mores out there for everyone on GitHub. And so then after the survey data is developed, we'll be filling our S'more code repository with our joint estimation through 2024, 2025, and then 2026, 2027, each of the 6 MPO modeling regions across the state of Oregon will be getting calibrated, finalized, specific ABMs from this joint estimation finalized in their region for their next planning efforts. And then past 2027, we'll live in a utopian world with the best generation of travel demand models on the planet, along with all the new information that they provide. So that's what's coming up. Everyone can just hold their horses till 2027. We'll be in a brand new environment. So that's what's happening on the travel demand model side. Alongside that, thanks to the urging and I think the brilliance of Peter Hurley, we were planning on doing a metrics conversation. The way I had it timelined out was going to be after the AVM was developed, we were going to figure out how to pull metrics out of this. And Peter Hurley really pushed the conversation to advance it to ensure that we were having a metrics conversation at the same time that we were in development. And so last year, with that correct advice, that smart advice, we launched the MMM conversation, which is really a metrics conversation, but it does go with s'mores. I learned so we didn't figure this out at the time, but we have now with s'mores, and on the population side we have popcorn. So we have a really good series of snacks being developed here. So and it's very funny too. Anyways, so in 2023 we kicked off and we framed that underneath the recently at the time launched Oregon Transportation Plan, the OTP, and in that Oregon Transportation Plan, 6 key goal areas were identified for the state, 3 of which being kind of the top tier elements driving transportation decisions moving forward. And so those are safety, equity, climate, safety number 1. And then additionally, just as important, but not quite as much, mobility, economic and community vitality, and the stewardship of our public resources, basically preservation, maintaining what we have, and finding a way to fund it. So we started this metrics conversation with those 6 specific discussion areas. So we developed groups of experts in each topic area, each of these 6 topic areas, and we had dedicated conversations, a series of 3, which each of the 6 groups, to kind of talk through from a selfish modeling perspective, what would it mean to get better information out of our models in each of these categories. And the way we've drawn it here, which is not an OTP product, equity kind of covers everything. We really, I would say we really focused on the 4 areas within that equity bubble: mobility, safety, climate, economic vitality. The stewardship of public resources we had conversations around that, but it's at least in the current conversations, it's really off model, so it's important but a little bit aside. And equity was not its own conversation, although we did talk with the equity section and experts in the agency about how to best integrate it. But we really tried to talk about equity across all metrics. It was not its own conversation; it was embedded in all of our conversations. So I think then my next slide is jumping into safety. So what did that mean? So each of those had their own conversation, but what did it mean specifically for safety? So one of the key performance metrics coming out of the OTP, the Oregon Transportation Plan, similar to metros, but maybe not quite as comprehensive, is to simply eliminate fatalities and serious injuries. So so that's a key piece of information that the state somehow has to figure out, how it's going to deliver successfully. And so, that was one key element guiding our metrics conversation, is how do we provide information towards that key metric. And then similarly here, we've got from the OTP, the goal of safety, of enabling safe travel for all people, regardless of their age, ability, race, income, mode of transportation. And then I won't read them all, but there's 3 objectives underneath that goal as well. And so we're using all of this from the Oregon Transportation Plan to kind of guide the conversation around, okay, what does that mean for our travel demand models? How can we help achieve that in some way? So I've got kind of this procedural pause slide in a couple of places. So procedural pause here. Throughout this conversation, our travel demand models have been around since, I don't know, a long time, many decades, 50s or 60s or something. I don't know. So we've had them a long time. And I don't know how everyone on this call feels, but I would say safety metrics is not their strong point. I think Metro is doing some things around MCE to get some safety elements there, but basically they've never really been built around providing safety information. And so as we've been moving forward through this conversation, I think we're trying to do as best as we can, but I think we're also checking back in on, what's the scope of a travel demand model, and just trying to do our best, but stay within scope. And I know personally, I wouldn't be able to really draw that line of what's in and what's out, but just noting that there's this continual check back about, wanting to do our best for all the metrics, including safety, but also trying to just make sure that we're not, totally in a totally, that we're still about travel demand modeling, and which includes safety, but not driven totally by safety. So just calling that out. So given that kind of what the OTP was laying out, and also kind of, well, what is in scope for travel demand model? So what can we do? And so the conversation focused in on, at the core of it, the most important thing for the travel demand model to do is to represent and forecast exposure. So like the travel demand model is really good at or theoretically can be made to be really good at both validating to the existing year, but then also forecasting up for future years in different scenarios, different project scenarios, where autos are going to be, where transit vehicles are going to be, where freight is going to be, where biking and walking, where they're all going to be. And so having that forecasted travel information about where are people trying to travel, what segments are they on, what roadways are they on, what is their exposure risk, that's where the model is can respond, can speak to, and that's where we want to beef it up and make it as good as possible. So I have there, so to best support safety, we need to do our best work representing travelers on the correct facilities in the correct amounts. So it kind of is as simple as that, but there's a couple of other but alsos, and so but also why we're working on ensuring that people in the right place. Part of that is better the model is better representing and better reacting to the quality of the system. So, again, as I said it, I don't think travel demand models have been super strong in safety metrics. I would argue that they haven't been super strong in representing the quality of active options, like so the routes that people have, and not just the fact that they have an option to bike here, like on the sidewalk, but that they have a quality option, or the difference between a sidewalk and a bike boulevard, or a 6-foot bike lane has a barrier of some kind. Luckily, even prior to this metrics conversation, the group has been aware of this, and so our upcoming new and amazing best of the best travel demand our travel survey has a lot of questions around understanding attitude towards biking, as well as the understanding what people are willing to accept from a risk, and what kind of comfort they expect. So all of these questions and more to possibly come. We're talking, or there's some conversations about having additional follow-on surveys to get even deeper into some of these areas. But basically, we're going to have a wealth of data in the travel survey, which is the key to having a travel model. You can't have a travel model without the survey. So we'll have the information now to do what we have never been able to do, and really build in this quality understanding into our models. So again, Utopia in 2027. So that's one element. So understanding exposure, where the risk is, getting quality right. The other thing the safety conversation brought up is that things like predicting safety, and if you're going to do it through the highway safety manual is super data hungry. And so you need a ton of context layers about what the land looks like, about what the asset, like the inventory of the street roadway network. I have like here, like lighting, even signal operation, distance to school. Like you need just this ton of contextual information. And so in the conversation, we agreed that the travel model network that we use, for the purposes within the scope of travel modeling, is never going to have all of that data. Like there's no reason to repeat and try and maintain on a living basis all of that information on the travel demand model network. So that's not the travel demand model's problem to solve. So what our attempt is going to be moving forward with this model series is to do a good job predicting where the people are at, and then having a linkage to the asset information and to the spatial layers, so that we can move our information about where people are predicted to be onto the data layers that have all of the information, and we can help do improved safety prediction with that tight linkage. So it's basically a data join. We have, like on ODOT's side, we'll have our linkages, our linear referencing methods to get from our model networks to our 82nd Avenue. Well, 82nd Avenue at the right mile points, and we'll move the data over, and we'll get all the asset information and just join it all up, and it'll be nice and pretty. That's the plan. So just an important distinction, though: the model networks are not responsible for retaining all this; they're just responsible for being able to join to these data sets. So that's all safety stuff, but just kind of what the conversation with all the metrics categories also helped highlight is that just moving to the ABM from the trip-based does a world of benefit for all of our metrics, not specifically unique to safety, but also that benefit safety. And so in the conversation, as we talked with all these groups, it was highlighted that, the ABM's power is really in the ability to understand an individual, at the agent level, individual travelers, the specific characteristics of those travelers, the motivations of those travelers, and the specific routes that those travelers are on. And so it's just something that a trip-based model would never be able to do. And so, again, across all of our metrics, but also with safety, having that detailed look. I mean, the way I like to think about an ABM is basically a travel survey expander and forecaster. So you're basically creating a brand new travel survey, like we've spent $6 million to collect in 2023, 2024, and you can now synthesize and make that 100%, and also grow it into the future under future conditions. So you have this amazing wealth of information about how people are traveling under different conditions, and that just is something that will greatly allow us to answer metrics in a totally different way. So I got a variety of elements there on the screen, but at the bottom there, like having the travel stress that a given individual faced on a given bike or walk is something that could be tagged at the individual level, that couldn't be done at a trip-based model, and then aggregated through for people of different neighborhoods or different races or of different income levels or whatever you wanted to do. So again, just like endless kind of possibilities there. Okay, so just another procedural pause. So those are all the things that I think are possible and within the realm, but there are definitely challenges up ahead, and so I think there's still this scope discussion about how far can we push the ABM to do the job that we would like it to do on the safety side, and so some things that we're up against here. So current shortfalls. So got three of them, probably more, but at least three of them. So if you really want like exposure data, ideally it's comprehensive and all the people that are out there. And so our travel models currently are focused on residents typically, and they don't usually have special markets like how are visitors traveling. Some usually university students are not fully represented the way they should be, and other special groups. And so, to really capture how many people are out there biking or how many people are walking along that road, you need to have all travelers, all users of the system. And so that's one place where it's unclear about how well are we going to be able to get that done. But for safety, we should really have all travelers. For safety, especially for active modes, we really need all trips too. And you would think, well, a travel model has all trips, doesn't it? Well, no, it doesn't. There's trips that are taken off and not deemed as like, travel. And those are typically loop trips. And so things like leaving your house and riding a 4-mile loop on your bike to get exercise and then returning to your house with never making a stop, you just had 4 miles of exposure, but that trip isn't counted in the travel demand model. And so, biking and walking, a lot of that travel, walking the dog, could indeed show up in loop trips. I don't know how much we've ever spent time investigating. I'm not aware of a lot of time in prior investigating that. At least with this travel survey, we're going to have a lot of detail about loop trips. So I think we can pontificate about how much of the percentage of bike and walk trips loop trips are. But with this survey, we should have a really good idea for what the percentage is. And my guess would be it's pretty significant, maybe not half, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's 25-30% of BMT or something like that. So anyways, it's unclear about how and if we'll be able to get loop trips into the system, but to really represent exposure, we would need to properly represent loop trips. And so that's not clear if it's in scope just yet. And the last thing is models, you have no comfort or no confidence in a model if you don't QC it against observed behavior. So we've always had a history of doing this pretty well against autos. We have a lot of count data. We can run our travel models through and check us against vehicle count data. But we've historically been pretty bad when it comes to bike and walk count data. And so we're going to do the best job we can. I'm committed to trying to do the best job that we can to scrape together the bike and ped data that we can for this estimation, this calibration effort underneath that estimation, and to try and be as confident as possible that our model is predicting where people are biking and walking as well as we can get it. Because if we're not doing that well, then the exposure data is up. So from a safety perspective, we need to do a really good job ensuring that biking and walking is happening on the right links. And again, it's kind of like this discussion of is that in scope or not. So a lot of challenges, but we're going to try. And so pretty committed to hitting that utopia. Going to get to the top. I love climbing mountains, and I'm usually stupid enough where I keep going until I get to the top, even if it's not safe. So we're going to make it to the top here, and I'm happy to take any questions if there's time.
All right. Thanks, Alex. Yes, we've got about 9 minutes or so for questions. So if you have any, please go ahead and raise your hand. Alex, I've got one. I'll start off with. You mentioned, that rather than doing some of these safety analysis or predictions within the travel model, the purpose of the travel model is really coming up with those forecasts, and that analysis would be done elsewhere or live elsewhere. Do you have a sense for what type of software or what type of framework ODOT might use in the future to combine those data sets or do that type of analysis?
I guess I'm trying to think. I guess my stumbling shows that there's no there's no specific software that the way I've been thinking about it up to this point is just simply to get the data onto the same, into the same table, and then to be able to do, table crunches and tabulations onto that. I'm sure there's a lot of software that could help support that and make it that much easier. But at this point, I'm not aware of we're moving forward to moving it into, paid software X. I don't know. I guess that's my simple way to answer the question. I mean, basically, step one is get the data in the same place. Once the data is in the same place, I think there's, that's the goal. And then there's a variety of software I think that you could do cool stuff with.